Welcome everyone. We're here at Black Hat 2019, day 2, rounding out day 2, almost, sort of. I don't know. I've lost all track of time.
Tail end of day 2.
Time has no boundaries here, apparently. I'm excited for our interview today. Ray DeMeo is the Chief Operating Officer at Virsec.
That's correct.
Ray, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Julian always seems to sneak on to a lot of different segments. This is his second interview at a Black Hat conference. Yeah. You've been on Paul Security Weekly. It's nice to have you back. Julian, for our audience, introduce your full name and title, please.
Sure.
Because for some reason I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, Julian Zottl. I work for Raytheon as a cyber and information operations subject matter expert.
Now, Julian, you're still working, obviously, with the Virsec folks on a lot of projects for your customers at Raytheon.
We are, yeah. That's a continual thing. I mean, Ray and I have known each other for a number of years, and most recently, actually, it's funny. A lot of times we introduce his product to help customers out and things like that. But for the first time, I think we're actually working on the same project, which is amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to get a little update on the product. And we talk about Runtime Application Memory Protection, right? That's a mouthful. Yeah. Which is it go on the operating system, Windows, Linux, Mac OS? And does it matter what the application is? I guess it's a good start.
Yeah, sure, great. So it doesn't matter. So firstly, anything x86.
Okay.
So Windows family, Linux, Unix family.
Yep.
It's not
Mac OS yet, or
not. Yeah, not yet.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. When we're talking about, I don't think it's
focused. We're focused on servers, protecting server workloads.
Yep. Okay.
We get asked all the time, "Oh, can you do endpoints?" Could, but it's really about bandwidth, about where do you spend your time. And
so
focus.
the operating
try to do this one thing really well.
The operating systems, Windows and Linux, that are running applications in a production environment, right?
Exactly.
To serve users, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Awesome.
Right.
That's good. And so when in containers, that's where I wanted to go next. Sorry, it's been a long day. I've done a container deployment. I love working with containers. It's great to see adoption grow. When I first started, it was kind of on that cusp of, will containers be a thing here to stay? And
that was about 9 months ago.
Yeah, right.
now it's everywhere.
So containers are here to stay, and now I feel like everyone should be asking the question, how do I protect my containers? But I think more people need to be asking that. So obviously you run inside of a container environment.
Perfect question. So we protect the workload. So really, whether it's on bare metal, whether it's on a VM, or whether it's in a container, right? The protection travels with that workload.
Right.
So this is what Gartner was highlighting in that their market guide for workload protection.
Yep.
So that's it. That it's the portability of it, and it's this essential need to be able to protect no matter where it resides.
I don't like the word agent for a lot of reasons, right? I think people have too many preconceived notions about the word agent, but I'm assuming you have to put some type of software or hook onto a container or a system, right?
The word agent.
Yeah, no one likes the word agent, right?
We call it a probe, and for this reason, we're not using any appreciable amount of memory or CPU within that workload. The whole idea is then to offload that to a separate analysis engine expressly for that purpose, right? So that you have minimal, low single digit overhead, if any. And so that's what's important.
I think there's a real distinction. We've already made it between endpoints and workloads, right?
Sure.
And I think an endpoint agent has a completely different context versus I update my Docker file with one line and then I've got your hook and I'm off to the races, right? To me, that's not really that's not an endpoint agent, right?
True, for sure. It's amazing, however, what we see in some data center environments, the amount, right, that total amount of CPU that's taken by many legacy things, that agents, I'll use that word, that are added. So how do you get that off? So it's a good thing, right? As we move forward to this container world, hopefully that whole world will start to shift and be far more efficient. So we're excited.
So how does it help protect my, in this case, container? It doesn't matter what it's running on. I'm just selfishly asking about containers.
So what we're doing, right? We're able to map the DNA, right? We're able to map the binaries of code, and then once we do that at boot or at the instantiation of that instance, and then as you go into run, then we're tracking that, right? We're able to see function call by function call. Is it going where it's supposed to go? Is it staying on the map, or is some threat actor trying to force that code to go in a bad location. So because of that, you need to be able to protect no matter where it resides.
Right.
And so whether, I guess the answer to that is it's the same, right? Whether it's on bare metal or whether it's in a container. Yet, as we move into the container world, they're being spun up more quickly. They're being spun up more broadly in a much wider arc of distribution. So it's important, and maybe more important, and harder to do, if I'll say it this way, than it's been in the past at any time in the past.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing to that. It's kind of interesting when you think about it, like applications run in containers and stuff, right? So, you could spin up 5 instances or you could spin up 1,000, right? And with a product like Virsec, they'll all be protected, which is kind of interesting.
So it's the protection, right? You're going to stop that code execution.
Correct.
Okay, that's
Correct.
awesome.
That's right.
Awesome.
It's detect and protect. Right.
Yeah.
This is the
new world we live in now. Believe me,
Right.
I think that's one theme that I've gleaned. You're lucky to be at this stage in the Black Hat. One thing I've gleaned is most that came on the show talked about how protection is the game now. Like detection's great, but if we got 1,000 containers, well, yeah, great that I can detect they're all being, someone's breaking into all of them. Awesome. I need to protect it because I can't.
Too late. You've been compromised.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and we were actually talking a little bit earlier about that. There are instances where you want, you can stop it in IPS mode, so to speak, right? You want to stop the process, etc. Or sometimes you want to let it go on.
Right.
To investigate what it's doing, or maybe making calls out to the internet or whatever. Because if we can do that now, if we stop a process because we see it's malicious, okay, that's good. If we stop a process after it's made DNS calls and things like that, now we can implement the protections at the borders because we know what it's going after.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it's looking at the function calls, and how is it determining good versus bad?
So we map the code itself, right? We're able to map the binaries. We're able to, our IP is essentially our ability to know, just by looking at the binaries, what is a function call. And therefore, if we know all of them in a piece of code, then we can also understand at runtime if they're being forced, or if execution is being forced to jump into a place where
different.
It's not supposed to go.
Right.
So
now
that's at the most primitive description.
Yeah.
But
you can use the word machine learning. It's okay. We don't deduct any points from using machine learning. But like, do you have maps of like known good, or do you build the map and then put that off on the cloud?
So we build it instantaneously, and it's this, right? If you say, well, gee, okay. Baseline my application or my environment on a good day. Well, what's a good day, right? We've seen this path, right? And then how much time does it take? Well, don't know, right? Or it takes hours or days.
Looking inside the code to build the map, and then looking at variances from that.
So that's not our world, right? Our world is to be able to build that map within a couple of seconds or less as you initiate that application.
I gotcha.
So as you boot or initiate that application, we can make that instantaneously. And so why is that important? That's important because you're making sure that what's running is actually the code that's been mapped.
Oh, I
it's
see.
Not
Yeah,
some
you don't want to store it because you won't get the current snapshot.
Right.
Especially with containers, it can change
For sure.
Every minute.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this is about certainly speed, right? How do you know the moment something jumps return oriented programming, some form of ROP job type of attack? We started out, we looked at that bright red line on the National Vulnerability Database, these memory exploits, and said, we got to stop that. That's our mission. That's what this company is going to be about. Because as we set out to do that, we also then quickly became able to cover much broader portion of that entire National Vulnerability Database.
Is it just memory exploitations in a traditional sense, or is it other manipulations that are just due to configuration? In Linux, for example, right? There's been a lot of recent attacks where file permissions and other things get me execution, but I'm not necessarily like doing a buffer overflow, for example.
So we've since added process monitoring, file system monitoring. We're able to also look at interpreted code as well. So there's a number of additional capabilities. But I come back to the core, right? Where grassroots, where did it come from? And it's about this ability to map the binaries from start. And map what is legitimate behavior. And so therefore it's It's not this, gee, I've got to learn and I've got to baseline over a period of time. Gee, I baselined on Friday, Monday morning, baseline's off. Right. There's solutions like that, and we know in those environments where customers certainly and prospects that we talk to say, "Gee, I don't enable protection because, gee, it's out of date, or I can't be sure that it's the same thing that we wanted to happen when we first ran the baseline."
Right.
Yeah.
So, assuming like command execution in my web app, that would probably flag, right? Because it doesn't.
Exactly.
This function normally doesn't like step out and execute a shell. It never has done that. In the code, it doesn't say it should do that, essentially.
Right, and actually earlier I was in one of the demos. I hadn't seen the newest version, and so we were checking out the newest version, and one of the things they did was drop a file on the web server itself remotely, and it picked it right up.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
That's, perfect example. Not an in-memory thing.
Right,
but it's obviously odd behavior.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We still see, as you mentioned, a ton of memory attacks, kernel-level attacks, things of that nature, but we also have the ones I always like that didn't rely on that because memory is very volatile, right? The more reliable ones for me as a pen tester are always the abusing a configuration or some other way to get execution that didn't involve memory.
So we've broadened our capability. Great example. Glad you could see those.
The
some of
demos
those
earlier.
later. We always like to bring our latest and greatest demos and show as many people. And of course, Julian can talk deep with our team on how do we do it. And you showed us some of yours too, which was impressive.
Yeah,
so the team liked to see some of his own exploits that he's built.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And did it catch you? There's always a cat and mouse game, right?
We didn't try that.
Okay.
I was like, oh, this looks like an exploit, that I may or may not have developed at some point,
Right.
And I was like, oh, here it is, and they were like, oh, that's cool, and so maybe we'll try it out.
We can talk shop like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That was great.
So what's the customer experience like? Is it and when do they implement it? Is you usually like post breach or pre breach, or like when you drop it in? Like what's the thing they're like? Oh my God, I would have never gotten this anywhere else. This is wonderful. Like what's the reaction?
Well, ideally for everyone, right? It's pre breach, right? We have conversations where someone's been breached and they don't want it to happen again.
Right.
So. You look at, so one of the things we're able to do, of course, at the same time is also see, where did this breach take place? How did it happen? If they've captured the malware, or and we've been asked from some of the people we both know, gee, can you look at this? This was being used to take down a piece of critical infrastructure or some pretty important system. And we've looked at it and said, here's how this works in our environment. And then the conversation goes forward. Let's do a POC. Let's do a pilot. Let's throw that same or others that are similar that we've known target those kinds of environments. And it's a powerful and compelling result that comes from that. So people are excited, because of this ability to see real time. Then number 2, automation. This ability to then within a very short period of time, right before a threat actor can exfiltrate data, before they can take down a system, we can then throw a protection action. And then finally, it's this ability to have seen a 0 days, have seen something that's either known or hasn't been patched,
right?
Either unknown or has not been patched. And so that's very compelling as well, because so many people are worried about, gee, we'll always say patch, right? Eat your broccoli, do these, brush your teeth, do these health things. Yet the time window is often longer than any enterprise wants it to be, right? Before they can marshal the resources to actually do that patching or take that protective action. So we're able to do it faster.
The protective actions, what are some of the best use cases, and how flexible is it?
So it's very flexible. We have both what we characterize as micro protection actions and then macro actions. So micro protection actions. Can you kill a thread, right? Can you kill a process right there at the application? Macro, can you go back to a WAF, for example, instantiate or create a rule, make that automated, as opposed to, gee, it's got to run up, here's an alert that has to go up to a dashboard, someone has to look at it in a SIM, someone has to decide, fill out a slip or whatever, a ticket, and then make it. Way too many bad things can happen before that ever. And of course, the other use case to your question, the other use case we see is, how do you up-level the task, the workload that our precious people resources are that we're trying to hire, that we're trying to retain. They're precious, right? They're hard to. It's hard to get the skill set, and it's hard to retain. It's hard to keep them interested. So if you can now make a lot of that more immediate action automated, and then move up to here's some rich forensic evidence. Where were they trying to attack? Exactly where in the application? At what time point? Where did they originate? So that level of visibility, you hear visibility a lot, right?
Yeah,
but
I heard it a lot this week.
Yeah. So so there it is. But that's powerful, and so that the conversation also goes to how can you move that to how can you move that to up leveling the skill set and the work.
What about kind of moving stuff around based on an attack? So I take my container. Oh, there's an attack, and I can move it somewhere else. I can talk to the Kubernetes or whatever. Same thing in the cloud. Can I talk to my cloud and put rules in there or move infrastructure around based on attacks to quarantine it?
Well, this is kind of in line with some of the things you were alluding to.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't be possible, especially with the advent of SOARs and all that fun stuff, right? If you kick off a process, you say, hey, look, this is attacking this section. The SOAR will be hopefully smart enough, right, to move that either around. We've seen stuff where, okay, it's deployed on Linux, et cetera, or something's running on Linux. It's attacking the OS. Let's move it to Windows, right? And now it's a different attack surface, and now it's going to take them longer, and now we can initiate better border protections before,
Is the API open so people could write those integrations if they wanted to and customize the actions that are taken?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we can. The orchestration part's really not. That's not the hard part, right? Or it's
yeah.
It's
Your
good,
API
doable,
spits out like something bad is happening here, right? Something just needs to catch that and go.
What do you
oh, that means I go do this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're it's really it is actually exciting when you can see the number of integrations, and we come up with ideas, but more often than not, it's the people we talk to that come up with ideas, and they're like, can you
practice,
do that? Like, yeah, we can do that. So.
Earlier we were talking.
It keeps growing.
We were talking a little bit about a different use case, which is, can we do this for malware analysis? If you have a process that you know really well and a piece of malware is attacking it, right? Well, their system gives us the ability. They have the binary mapped out, right? So they know where that malware hit. So might speed up malware analysis too. We were kind of playing around with that idea earlier. We're like, okay, maybe this is something we're going to investigate,
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could determine if that maps back to a known vulnerability or not a known vulnerability, because like you said, Julian, you know exactly in the binary where it hit. You go back through patches and go, hold on. There's no
CVE.
there's no CVE. There's no patch for that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep, right. So you're covering known and unknown, of course, landscape, and that's a big part of our mission.
Yep. And the dashboard that comes along with it, I'm assuming that's in the cloud, and like, what does it look like? Or
we've got a dashboard. We like it. It's a lot of effort's been put into being able to not only show graphically applications that are protected, applications that are under attack, and then the ability, of course, to drill down into the data behind that. So all great, yet there's plenty of dashboards out there too. So we continue
the dashboard's the API today, right? Like
so we have very useful, flexible, informative dashboard. Yet everything we make available right through the API. So what we do an integration with Phantom. We showed you the Phantom integration.
Yep. Awesome.
Of course, but anything else,
yeah,
it doesn't matter, right? Stix, Taxi.
Yeah, the SOAR platform is a logical place, I think, to put it. Yeah, for sure.
So we have an orchestration engine right, that can take these protective actions ourselves, but certainly a SOAR platform could do the same.
If people want to get a trial or a demo, is there a trial or a demo? Like, how does that work? It's fine. I just like our audience to know what they can expect.
Oh, sure.
If they want to try it, they're listening to this and go, I really want to try that. Like, can they go get a free trial, or they have to register for a demo? Either's fine. So you can go to our website and you can register for a demo for sure. Yep. If you want to do a trial, if someone was serious enough about saying, hey, I want to take this for a test drive, we do a couple things depending on the customer and depending on the situation. Of course, we can set up in your local environment. Additionally, we can spin up environments in our own lab and have you VPN in and run whatever you want on it. So we can provide applications, we can provide exploits, you can bring your own, but we try to make it very flexible. So we find
you guys have seen this, right? The hardest thing for many people is just setting up the environment.
Yeah.
So we can spin up an environment pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
and we can make an instance available of our application or our solution, and then a pretty wide range of applications as well. So
Awesome.
so that's so we try to make it easy. On our website, you can click Virsec.com. You can say, I want to see a demo, and then you can also, of course, fill out a form, and we can have that conversation toward doing a pilot.
Fantastic.
Or
Ray,
POC.
Julian, thank you so much.
Thanks, been a pleasure, man.
Thank you.